recover from the timing. So sometimes I wake up at midnight, and on a good day, I know where I am. On a bad day, I'm uh, I'm I'm confused. So, and sometimes I make coffee only to realize that I don't have a class for that particular week. Anyway, those things. Maybe if you're a little bit younger, it's not going to happen. But as you pile up on decades, it's a more difficult, or probably because it's winter, so it's really cold. So your blood is concentrated into your, I know. Anyway, so quite an opening conversation for our morning today. Okay, so what are we supposed to do today? So what are we supposed to do today? Okay, we're able to we're able to discuss the concepts, or rather the practical aspects of CI resolution, right? There are still some slides there that personally is okay not to pursue for the moment. So I guess for today I've decided that we will not go back to that for now, because those mostly the topics that I skipped were mostly in addition to, right? So caching and all those things. Uh, so the ETI resolution, right? So the ETI resolution, um, I want to go back a little bit, just a little bit for the meantime, to prepare us for the succeeding modules. Okay, so the ETIs and the resolution will get clearer as we move towards our discussion for today. Okay, so what are we discussing? So that's what we're going to start. We'll have a little bit of a review. We'll have a little bit of a review on what we talked about, and then go to ETI resolution, and then jump into the discussion today. So we're going to be a bit busy in terms of labs and lecture. So I'm hoping, okay, that we can stick to 50% labs, 50% lecture. I'm hoping. What do you mean when you say hoping, Roberto? I'm hoping I will be less talkative. But sometimes it's also the demonstration. So sometimes my wife complains. You talk the whole day and then you still talk after the class. So or she expects me to just shut up at night. Yeah. So anyway, it's perhaps the things that I have picked up for the past decades, right? So I'm used to talking the entire time. I know, Terry. So they said it's basically an art, right? So we're artists in talking. Okay. So anyway, we'll discuss the topics for today, right? So event reduction, TBEC or topology based event correlation, SBEC or stream based event correlation, and lastly event automation forwarding. It's gonna be just a heads up, guys. Well, to me, it's not really that difficult anymore because I've been doing this for quite some time. But for newcomers, it might be overwhelming. Okay, so because when I go for slides, there will be a lot of talks. If I go for a demonstration, there will be a lot of movements. Okay, so just keep up. If you need me to slow down, I'll slow down for you. But anyway, the lab environment slows us down anyway, right? So which is the good news for that. Okay, so that's gonna be the plan for the entire day. Okay, so let's go back to what we already know. We talked about the event pipeline. Remember that flow chart? that we talked about, right? So refer to that, visit that anytime within the day. So just to zoom in on what we're talking about, okay? And then the CI resolution. In summary, why is CI resolution important? We need to associate the event to the corresponding CIs. Why? Because in OBM, you have the option to uh, associate it with a non-node configuration item. Okay, so unlike in traditional monitoring tools, in traditional event management systems, in traditional event browsers, we normally associate everything with the node. Okay, now why would you consider associating an event with non-node CIs? You'll see in the next few modules and in the next few days. Okay, one reason is TBEC, or topology based event correlation. Okay, so that's one reason. Second will be health indicators, the service health. Okay, third will be uh, related to service health, which is the modeling. Okay, so they're all interconnected with one another. So that's the primary reason, right? So another reason will be we have multiple sources, or configuration items might come from different collectors, as they say, NNMI, SiteScope, APM, SolarWinds, other things, right? W- So the question is, if we receive the event, we would like to make sure that it is attached to a particular configuration item. Okay, so if you're coming from traditional event management systems, that's a horizontal move, so to speak, right? So this is how you do it in traditional event monitoring systems. CI resolution is important in OBM. Okay, what's gonna be new to you yesterday was the ETI resolution, right? Event type indicators. Okay, which is the ETI resolution. Okay, so we talked about event type resolutions, and we were not really able to talk about it in detail. Okay, so as a review, right? So we use ETIs, or event type indicators, for TBEC, SBEC, duplicate suppression, and pairwise. Now, if you're going to create an ETI, okay, you can create an ETI or an HI. An HI is an automatic ETI, right? So what's the difference between ETIs and HIs? HIs can influence the health status calculation of a CI, right? ETIs will not influence the health of a CI. It will only influence the processing of events. Okay? The processing of events. Uh, the reason why it exists is because, historically speaking, if you remember, APM and OBM are on the same binary distribution. Okay, so a lot of you are new here. Back in the days, if you needed to install OMI, which is now OBM, but back in the days, if you needed to install OMI, you need to install BSM or APM along with it. Okay, so APM is a metric based monitoring. Okay, so it can definitely generate events, but in reality, it forwards the events to OBM. Okay, so then OBM processes that as part of the event processing scheme. But APM is more of metrics. Okay, so it monitors values 92, 92, 65. Well, metrics can actually be literal as well, or strings, right? So up and down, so something like that. So those metrics are are associated with states. So when you collect those metrics or your states, those metrics or states can directly influence the health of a CI. Okay? So imagine your fuel gauge. If you have a car and if you drive, imagine your fuel gauge, right? So your fuel gauge will have a half tank, a quarter tank, a three-quarter full tank. Your your dashboard will have a speedometer. So if you hit the pedal, the speedometer will the speedometer needle will move up. Okay. If you take your foot off the pedal, the speedometer needle will go down, right? So then you will also have your what you would call your RPM there if you have those modern dashboards. So think of APM as like that. Think of metric based monitoring as like that. So it gives you an idea about the state of your engine, of your wheels, of your drive, of your uh, drive gear, so on and so forth, right? So and even if your fuel gauge. So APM is like that. Health indicators is like that, right? So if you're new to this, okay. So we need the health indicators. And yesterday we talked about the ETI hints. Okay, so the ETI hints. What you see on the screen right now is a snippet of an event. Okay, so the event will show you the related CI. We know that already. The node CI, we know that already. Okay, it will also show you the source CI. We know that already under the CI resolution module. What we don't know yet is we talked about the hints. We did not really talk about in detail the API. Okay? So when you look at the event, this is not the hint, right? You're not dealing with the hints here. So although the title of the screen is a hint, okay? The hint will give you this. This is your target. Okay? If your hints are properly defined, okay, your event, which is this one, will be able to will be associated with an EDI. Okay, so this is telling you that this particular event is using this EDI. This particular event is using this EDI. This particular event is using this EDI. So what? If it's using EDI, right? It can be just an EDI, or the EDI can be an HI as well. Okay? If the event is associated with an ETI, it can now be processed in TBEC, SBEC, and suppression. So if you want suppression, you want TBEC, you want SBC, this field here must be filled up. Okay, so it's gonna be your responsibility if you're the OBM admin or if you're the OBM policy administrator. Okay, it doesn't have to be just the administrator, guys. Okay, so some of us might take on the OBM administrator role. Some of you might take on policy administration. So this falls under policy administration. Okay, so it's going to be the responsibility of the policy administrator to determine what ETI is going to be associated with the event. So how do you? So after you determine, how do you modify the policy? That's where you give it the ETI resolution hint, which is part of my demonstration yesterday, right? Which is part of my demonstration yesterday. Okay. So where do or how do you build ETIs? Well, it really depends. This can become extremely complicated, right? So it this can become extremely complicated because you need to analyze for every event. Roberto, this can be extremely difficult because um, it's for every event, right? So it's for every event. Here's the story. Okay, if you're able to capture the ATIs, okay, if you go back to the OBM 120 training, there were some of the marketing slides there, right? And as an instructor, sometimes I'm guilty of skipping the marketing slides. Okay. Because we have a lot of technical topics to discuss. Okay, but anyway, one of the things that you saw in the OBM 200 on the OBM 120 training, some of the marketing slides there were about minimizing the MTTR, right? The mean time to repair, right? The amount of time your operators will be spending, the amount of time your operators will be spending analyzing events, things like that. Okay. So honestly speaking, when I go through that uh, um, slides, I tend to be a little bit sensitive to my audience, especially if my audience are in the operations team. Okay, so why? Because whenever you talk about optimization, automation, and all those things, there are times when it will affect actually jobs, right? So it will affect jobs. So some people be hesitant to implement something because they think that it will affect their jobs. Okay. In relation to that, why are we discussing that even? It's because of this, right? So if you really think about it, what is being demanded of us here is analysis of every events that comes in, right? And supposedly we need to provide and associate the event for every configuration item, right? So do you even have you even have has that even sunk in? When I was talking about the CI resolution a while ago, the concept of I associate an event to a corresponding CI, and now we're thinking of associating the actual events to additional ETIs. Okay, and what is the purpose of this? What's the purpose of suppression? What's the purpose of suppression? The purpose of suppression is to minimize what appears in the browser. Okay, so the less events you see in the browser, the more optimized your operators will be. Okay, of course, if your operators are optimized, the less operators you need. Does that make sense? Okay, so people would say, well, what about my job, right? So what about my job? So we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about jobs, okay, in a bit. Um, so sometimes when we're dealing with this scenario, right? That's gonna be the movement, and here's the product positioning of Microfocus. Microfocus in doing all of this wants us to spend time actually analyzing events for it to be optimized and for it to become meaningful later on. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is instead of spending manual analysis of events, manual analysis of emails, okay, if we can spend time analyzing events, their relationship to one another, we can definitely support the requirements of ITSM better, right? So this will definitely take time and, well, manpower and analysis. And I haven't discussed RTSM yet. Okay? So if you bind it all together, CI resolution, event type indicators, okay, you will see and you might see that it could actually be a lot of work. But in reality, our primary end goal is to minimize the events that appear on the browser, meaningful events. And this is the scenario here. There was a time when, as an event administrator, right? My I can understand that event administrators, for those of you who have a lot of experience in the matter, sometimes your biggest problem right? Have you ever encountered this? You wake up in the morning, you're on your way to the office, and okay, you receive this whatever email, text message. Okay, the Oracle server went down. Okay, you know when I receive something like this, right? As the event administrator, my heart skips a bit, just a bit. Okay, and you know why it skips? Because I'm hoping that I was able to generate an event for this. If I'm able to generate an event for this, my responsibility is basically almost okay. So I'm off the hook, so to speak, quote unquote, right? Why? Because my responsibility as the monitoring person is to make sure that events are generated when systems fail. Okay? The biggest problem is when uh, a service went down and you did not receive any event. So imagine if there's a mission critical event for a particular service and it went down and you only found out after an hour, after 2 hours, and then you find yourself in an emergency meeting. So it's already heated up, right? So it's like a pressure cooker in there, and then the IT director comes in and blurts out, "Why did we not receive the event?" Right? And everybody looks at you. Right. So it's a true story, guys. So that's not the position you want to be in. So what I'm trying to say, it's all related to this. As event monitoring specialists or analysts or architects or or engineers, whatever your role will be, sometimes we're scared of event not arriving in the browser. Okay, so imagine that, and that's gonna be the mindset of everybody in the organization. Okay, including people who are sending events to you. And actually, in that's the mindset. The majority of and I like working with them. Right, I don't see no problem working with some of my with most of my colleagues. But here's the thing: when it comes to forwarding events, they'd rather they forward it to you rather missing out on the event. So you find yourself in a position where you've got a lot of events to deal with. Okay. So because at the end of the day, you don't want, from the monitoring perspective, you don't want to be that guy who missed a particular event. Okay. So having said that, we don't want to miss an event. So okay, so let's take that in. I don't want to miss an event. How am I going to help myself process them? Okay. So how do I make the people in the environment uh, have a browser that will be more efficient in their workspace? Okay, of course you have a lot of uh, capabilities back in the days, but in OBM we're dealing with event type indicators. Okay, so there are options that you can use. One, you can event processing. Okay, you can create scripts. Okay, so if you want to correlate it with one another, you can create scripts. Creating scripts are powerful, guys. And if you notice in OBM, we can. There are actually 4 areas that you can create scripts. Remember that in module 2, you can create scripts. The problem with scripts is you need to be a programmer. Okay, so if I have an ITIL person, if I have a service manager, or if I have an architect, sometimes architects are knowledgeable with programming languages, but I will totally understand if some of them are not. Okay, because it's not really part of their responsibilities. They're more on load, quality, transaction processings, and all those things. Okay, so scripts for event processing is fine, but it's just so a decade ago. Okay, Meaning to say, you need a programming skill to figure it out. So what that means is you take out 85% of your IT force, and they will not be able to help you with event correlation or event processing. Why? Because maybe majority of them are not into programming. Maybe some of them are programmers back in the days, just like me, but I don't want to do full time programming anymore, right? So maybe 20% programming. It's fun, but anything beyond that, it's just too much. Okay, my soda and pizza days are gone. Okay, nowadays I just focus on administration, installation. It's easier to predict, so to speak. Okay, so what is the ETI? So remember, our goal here is to correlate events, right? Our goal here is to process events. So what else? It's gonna be with ETIs. With ETIs, it's going to be it's there's still going to be work to be done, but this event type indicators, you don't need any programming experience. You just need to be familiar with, maybe at the least, you need to be familiar with IT jargons and IT terminologies. Okay, I've seen service managers who are not really IT back in the days, but who took up some IT courses in order for them to support service management, right? So because they're under project management and all those things, but they really wanted to move to IT. So they're familiar with IT jargon. You can actually invite them and provide all those ETI hints. The only thing they need to do is to be familiar with the interface. Okay. So having said that, so why do we need ETIs from? Because OBM is the melting pot. Okay. So you can imagine events coming from multiple sources. Okay. So when these events come from multiple sources, okay, how will OBM relate them to one another? Okay. And that's through ETIs. If they share the same ETIs, OBM might be able to relate them with one another together with RTSM, relationships, configuration items, okay, and define a relationship between that particular browser. Let me give you a scenario here. Imagine you receive imagine you receive an event from SiteScope telling you that, remember, SiteScope can do ping. Okay, let's write it down. Okay, so imagine this is SiteScope here on one side. This is another other side. You have SiteScope here. You have NNM here. Okay, so SiteScope has a ping monitor. So it pings. It pings the whatever, the web server. Okay, so it has a ping monitor. The web server fails, so you receive an event. Okay, NNMI, on the other hand, is monitoring the router. Okay, the interface card, whatever. Right. So NNM is monitoring the router, that interface card, which happens to be what SiteScope is doing and analyzing. Okay, you receive an event. This is OBM. This is OBM right here. Okay. So how will OBM relate and process these two events and say and tell you that, hey, you know what? These two events are actually related to each other, right? These two events are related to each other, and you don't require to create scripts. Back in the days in the OM world, right? In the OM world, Okay? Not the OMI. In the OM world, we have even in NM we have that back in the days. We have what we call ECS. ECS stands for Event Correlation Services. Okay, so in the OM world, we have the server, okay, and we have the agent. On the server side, we have what we call MSI. Okay, on the agent side, we also have what we call MSI. Okay, this was available in Vantage Point operations, OM operations, and all those things. Okay, in NNM it's gonna be the same, right? So in NNM all the way to 7.5x. Okay, in NNM all the way to 7.5x. Not the I version. When they release the I version, it's gone. Okay. We also had the ECS back in the days. Okay. Uh, what is this? Why am I telling you this? Because if I'm the administrator, and ECS stands for Event Correlation Services. Okay. What that means is I can tap into the event stream and process and inject what I want to do there. Okay. Now, in order for us back in the days to tap and process that, we need to do it in Java. Okay. And there was an ECS, there was a correlation designer, right? So we download that tool, we create that tool, right? Some of them are user are interface, but a lot of them are actually in configuration files. Okay, just to give you an idea, to create correlation services, we somehow had to create, in assembly language. So back in the days, in assembly language, you have OR gates, AND gates. Okay, so it was like that. Okay? It was like that. So we had to create something like a logical AND gate or a logical OR gate just to relate events to one another. Okay. Uh, in OBM now, we don't need that. So just look at what I'm showing you. Okay. So I have site scope, which sends me the event. I have NNM, sends me the event. Okay. Do I need to have any programming requirements? Not necessarily. All I need to do is to make sure that all I need to do is to make sure that I've got APIs. So that's how OBM will do that for you. Okay, so that's how OBM will do that for you. And right, so all you need to have is the indicators and your understanding. Now, in all of this three slides here, okay, best practices and all of those. So what it's basically telling you guys is OBM has a lot of event type indicators and health indicators already existing. So it's out of the box. You have a lot of health of HIs and ETIs that you can already use for your purposes. So if you want, you can follow that. So there will be ETIs for monitoring automation. There will be ETIs for OBM content packs, right? There will be ETIs for site scope. There will already be ETIs for other things. Okay. Now, you can create your own indicators if you wanted to. This is what I've shown you yesterday. So remember my demo? I've created the stability indicator. Okay. Stability indicator. I've created that. Okay. So if you remember that, right? So I've created the stability indicator. And then I've created another one today, which is the coolness indicator. Now, some of you attended the UCMDB training. Remember that in OBM, we also have RTSM. And it was part of your OBM 120 training, right? So for those who attended the 120 under me and Terry, right? So remember that you had the RTSM training there. Okay. And in the RTSM training, we talked about a little bit about the CI types. Okay. The configuration item types. Okay. And the configuration item types is object oriented. Okay. So object oriented. The configuration item types were object oriented. Okay. And since it's object oriented, I'm not sure if you're familiar with oriented paradigm. They have what you call classes. So classes is it's not the object. It's a definition of what an object should be. It's an abstract. Okay. So if I tell you car, you know that car is an object, right? Or a car can be an object rather, right? But if I tell you a car, it's an abstract. In your brain, you know you have a picture of what a car looks like. You know that a car will have wheels, an engine, things like that. But that's in your brain, that's in your imagination. It doesn't mean that it exists, right? So when I say the car class, it doesn't really exist. It exists in your brain, but it might not exist yet. The moment you go out and if you drive and you own a car, that is the object. The car in your garage, the car that you ride to commute is the object, right? So in object-oriented approach, there are what you call classes. Okay? There's what you call classes, and classes are the definitions of what an object should be, right? For example, I can have a person class. When I say person class, it doesn't exist. Okay? It's just an object definition, right? So you know right away in your brain that oh, there's an object here. But when I say Roberto is a person, then Roberto exists of the type person. Okay? So class is the definition. Instance is Roberto. But how do you know if Roberto is a person? Okay? Maybe Roberto is not a person. Okay? Artificial intelligence without the intelligence. Anyway, let's go back here. Let's go back here. So what you see on what you see on the slide here is the CI type, okay? Which is the class. So everything that you see here is the CI type. So they don't exist. They're just definitions. Okay? Now one of the things that is good in object-oriented approach is inheritance. So you can create a hierarchy. Okay? So you can create a hierarchy. Like under node, right? You have computer, which is a subclass of node. Under computer, you have further classes. You have Unix, you've got Windows, you've got IBM mainframe, so things like that. So this is a hierarchy. Okay, the good thing about it in a hierarchy is in object-oriented approach, you will have inheritance. So computer, IBM mainframe, Unix, Windows will all inherit, okay? Will all inherit attributes or settings for its parent class and any other above it. So Unix will inherit from computer, computer will inherit from node, therefore Unix will inherit from computer and node. Okay? So what are we talking about here? When you define indicators, you associate indicators to a class, a CI type. So what that means is everything under it will inherit the class. So everything under it will inherit the class. Now, if you're going to define the inheritance, if you're going to define the indicators, rather, it must be applicable to that particular class itself. Okay? So this is everything that we talked about at the moment for ETIs. Okay? So for ETIs, I'm going to skip talks about site scope. I'm going to skip talks about MA for the moment. It will be easy for us to get back to that when we're solid when we have solidly identified what our ETIs for. Let's talk about what our ETIs for. Okay, and then understand after this what SiteScope is doing, what BPM is doing, and what other aspects are doing. Okay, so it's like learning how to drive. Okay, so the best way to learn back in the days how to drive was to drive a shift stick. But nowadays, maybe it's not really valid anymore, right? Uh, what I always tell my friends who or my relatives who would like to learn how to drive, just proceed with an automatic car, right? It's easier. Okay, so I leave the ETI then, right? So I've demonstrated the things that I wanted to demonstrate. So in addition to that, we'll do some more. Okay. All right. So here, module 5, we'll talk about event reduction. So here we'll see how ETIs work and and their relationship to event reduction. Okay. Now, uh, event reduction is not solely dependent on ETIs. Okay. You don't need ETIs to do some of the event reduction strategies that you're going to do. Okay, it would help. Definitely, it will definitely help, but you don't necessarily need them for some. Okay, so after all of this discussion, okay, we will apply what we learned for the ETI scenarios. Okay, so we talked about in this module, we'll talk about closing related events. Okay, so we need to be sectioned here, guys. So we need our understanding to be compartmentalized. Then duplicate suppression, okay? Event suppression and event storm suppression. So 4 items. So first, close related events. We can close related events in two ways: key and ETI. So those two, okay? Personally, I prefer this as a demonstration. Okay. Personally, I prefer this as a demonstration. So I'm skipping the slides. I'll go for a demonstration. Okay. So give me a second here while I prepare. Uh, so give me a second. So I'm sharing my screen and you should see it now. Okay. So let me know if you're seeing it. You should be. Thank you, Fabian. Okay. All right. So, close related events. Okay. So there are two types of demo. One, okay, you can you can close related events using keys. Okay. Keys are actually inherited from the OM. So we've been doing this for a long time already, right? So keys and and for ETIs. Okay. Okay. So ETIs. So I'll demo this one first. I'll demo the ETI first. Okay. This one. So I'll demo the ETI one. So first, you need to know CI resolution, right? So review your CI resolution. I'm not going to review that for you anymore, right? Indicator creation. Okay? So I have demonstrated this for you yesterday, remember? Right? I have demonstrated this for you yesterday. So I'm not going to demonstrate it anymore. Okay? We're just going to use what we have talked about and then policy. So let's review the policy that I have created for you. So look at this. I go to my open message interface. S- Roberto, will this apply on SNMP traps? Of course. Will this apply on REST? Of course. Will this apply on log files? Of course. It will apply on anything. Right? So uh, don't worry. It will apply on anything. So let me show you what I've done. So this is an ordinary policy generating an event. Okay. Ordinary policy generating an event. But I did modify the policy itself. Okay. So I now created two rules. I created the down rule and the up rule. Okay. So the down rule and the up rule. The down rule, I will receive a down. See this? Right? The up rule, I will receive an up. You see that? Okay. So let's go to the down rule first. I go to the down rule, go to the event attributes. Event attributes. Okay. CI resolution review. Related CI, we populated it yesterday. So I have demonstrated that to you yesterday. Okay. ETI review. You put here your ETI. So you see that ETI there, which is what I'm highlighting right now. You need to associate it with your policy. Okay? So you need to associate it with your policy. So how do you know what indicators you have? So just go here, indicators here. Click that. Look for the look for the class. Look for the class that you will have your indicators with, right? So I've defined coolness there. You see the coolness? Okay? So I'll just drag and drop the indicators that I want here. So I made it simple. So one is critical. So when I receive a down, I will use an ETI hint. Guys, this is an ETI hint. Okay. I will use an ETI hint called coolness critical. If I receive an up, I will receive an ETI hint of coolness normal. You see that? So yesterday I've demonstrated how we've created an indicator. If you remember the stability level. Okay? So, but for the purposes of discussion, I just want to use two attributes here. You can have multiple severity if you like. Okay. Now, so I've created this. So I've deployed it already to minimize the time for my demonstration. So let's go and execute that. So here I'm going to generate a down. Okay. I'm going to generate a down, and I will set the severity critical. I will set the severity critical. I've created I've created the indicator, remember? I'm going to use this CI resolution format. So if you remember that CI resolution format, so we're clear with this, right? So let me press this. What do you expect? You're going to generate an event. The event that you're going to generate, if you open this event, the event that you generated will be related to web order. Web order. Okay? Web order CI. Okay? You have the node CI. You see the event type indicator here, coolness critical. You see that? The event now is associated with an ETI. Okay? If I go to resolver hints, I have 3 of 4. Okay? So one of them, so I was able to resolve this, right? I was able to resolve the coolness critical. Okay? So if I go to health perspective, I select my SQL view, right? I select the event in the browser, okay? In the health perspective, under health perspective, it will tell me that here, over here, come on, okay? It will tell me that over here, okay? It will tell me that I have the coolness factor, and the coolness factor has a state of critical. But it's a health indicator. It's a health indicator, but it's not contributing to KPIs. Okay? It is not contributing to KPIs, which is what you see on the left pane here. Okay? The on the left pane here, you have your KPIs associated with each of your configuration setting. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so you have your coolness, you have all of that. All right. So what do we do now? Okay? Well, we can go back and generate an up event. In the up event, I do that. I will have the same CI resolution target, right? I press this. Observe what's going to happen. I receive the up event. The down event is gone. It's been replaced by the up event. In my health perspective, if I go to the event perspective, the up event replace that particular configuration. Okay? And why is that so? Because I receive the ETI hints. Okay? I receive the ETI hints. And the event is associated with event type indicator. Just like that, using an event type indicator, you're able to correlate two events. You're able to correlate two events and automatically acknowledge the up event without implementing pairwise, okay? Without implementing any scripts, okay? You just need to define the event type indicator that was generated. Okay, now there are so many ways of doing this, guys. You can use the pairwise correlation if you wanted to, but here we're closing. This is closing events. We're closing events based on event type indicators. This is just one of the purposes of event type indicators. And in order for this to work, the CI, the related CI type must be the same. The related CI type must be the same. Okay, so in order for that to work, the related CI type must be the same. For the up and the down, they must be the same. The event type indicator must be the same with different states. Okay? The up should be normal, the others should be not normal in order for that to work. Okay? Now, what if you don't want, Roberto, what if I don't want ETIs? It's too much work. That's one. Okay? This is too much work. It's just part of it, right? So sooner or later, We need to migrate from manually analyzing events to designing. That's actually what Microfocus wants the customer's roadmap should be, right? So the customer's roadmap should be, uh, we want human resources. We don't want to eliminate jobs. We want jobs that analyze events. So we want all of the things that can be automated. So instead of spending time, filtering it through eyes, filtering it through human processing, okay, we can spend time on automating it because it's actually faster that way, right? So it will be definitely faster that way. So it's not really something that will replace manual analysis of jobs. Okay, so it is work, which is good because we can associate events from multiple sources. Okay, now if you don't have ETIs, you can also go for keys. Okay, keys are basically, you have two types of keys, right? Open keys and closed keys. Okay, when we say key assignment, it's just either a key assignment or a closed key assignment. To demonstrate this, some of you might not be familiar with this. So I'm going to edit the policy one more time. I'm still working on the same policy, guys. I'm still working on the same policy. Okay. So while waiting for this, what I will do is I'll remove the ETIs from my policy. I'll remove the ETIs from my policy. Roberto, do I actually need to put the ETI in the policy setting? Ideally, right? So ideally. So anyway, we go back here. What I will do is I will go to down. I go to event attributes. I'll remove the ETIs. Right? So that's because we don't want ETIs, or we don't understand ETIs. We want to revert to our original ways of doing stuff. Okay? So that's what happened. I remove the ETIs. So in the down event, I can create keys. So I can go to event correlation. I can define keys here. What are keys? Keys are strings. So hopefully this is clear enough for you. The font and the color. Keys are strings. I'll capitalize it. Capitalize. Keys are strings. Okay? It can be whatever you fancy here. Okay? It can be whatever you fancy, as long as you put something in there. Okay? So it's a highly arbitrary. So to demonstrate its arbitrariness, I will use event key. So when I receive the down, to demonstrate, to demonstrate, to demonstrate um arbitrariness here, I will use perseverance Mars. Okay? So to demonstrate that, I will use perseverance Mars. Because according to Roberto, it could be anything. Of course, eventually it has to mean something. But I'm just demonstrating it's not complicated, right? You can put whatever you want there. So I'll close this just to give you an idea, right? I close this. I'll deploy it. I'll deploy it for the sake of discussion. I'll deploy that guy for the sake of discussion. All right. So it's now deployed, right? So it's now deployed. So what happened when you deploy it? So let's send a down event. So here I'm sending a down event. That's all I did. That's all, right? But before we send a down event, let's acknowledge everything first for the purposes of our discussion. Okay? So let's send a down event here. Why not? Send the down event. I got the down event. Okay, so what did you do? Well, what I did was actually a very simple one. Uh, wait, I think did I save it? So I'm just redoing this, guys. Give me a second. There you go. Okay, so I made a mistake with my earlier deployment. I may have selected another machine. Okay, so look at this. So what happened? What I did in that policy is create a key. So when I generated the event, I just created a key called Perseverance Mars. That's all, right? So it's just a string. You can put whatever there. You can put your name. You can put Batman. You can put Superman. You can put whatever you want there. Okay. Now what you want to do is I want to use that key of the down event. I want to use that key of the down event to close it when I receive an up event. Does that make sense? I want to use that key for the down event to close it when I receive the up event. So I go back to my policy. I'll go back to my policy and modify my policy. It's gonna be worth the wait, guys. So just bear with the demonstration speed here and our pacing. Okay, so I will now have the remember the down in the down under correlation. I selected the Perseverance Mars. So now I go to the up event. I go to the up event. All I need to do is to put that here. I want to close all events with a key called Perseverance Mars. I want to do that. That's all you need to do. You click save and close. You click deploy 1.13. I will deploy this now to NFS. Override, yes. Click finish. Click OK. Generate the up event. Generate the up event. What do you think the up event will do? It will generate an event and then close all events with a key of Perseverance Mars. Does that make sense? So that one you don't need an ETI. Okay? So you can put whatever you want there. Now, in real life, of course, you don't want to just put anything there, right? I just needed to demonstrate that it's not rocket science. Okay? So I just needed to demonstrate that it's just a string. It's a string that you put to relate two events with one another. So having said that, you must properly properly formulate the string. So definitely it should not be something like this, right? So definitely it should be something, most likely a combination of variables, like maybe the message node name, okay? Maybe the uh um the message object or application, right? Maybe you can do that. Maybe you want to put an actual string here, okay? And maybe you would like to have the severity, or maybe the message text also, if you needed to, right? Or maybe just the severity, okay? For the down event. So the severity here will be, let's say, critical, right? So for the down event, that's going to be formulated. Now for the up event, you want to copy this over. You want to copy that over, go to the up event, and that's what you want to close. But there's a catch. The message severity is going to be wrong. So you have to hard code the severity. You have to hard code the severity value there. So you see the relationship. The down, it's all variable substitution. The up is a combination of variable substitution and some literal strings that you need to put in there. Okay? You might also want to say what, so if you notice the down event, right? I'm not putting any closed events here. Does that make sense? Right? So I'm not putting any closed events on the down event. On the up event, I'm not putting any key on the event key field. You can do that. Or if you want, you can go to the down event and then copy and paste it over here. So what does that mean? Well, if event 1 arrives and another event with exactly the same thing arrives after, all previous events will be automatically closed. Okay? Something like that. So, but there's suppression mechanisms in place. So most of the time we don't put anything in there, but you can as well. Okay, so I'll cancel this. That's how you work with keys. Okay, so anyone who needs a break, we can go for a 15-minute break because I'm not done with you yet. So who needs a break? So we're good. Okay, so duplicate event suppression. OBM can process duplicate events. It can identify and suppress duplicate events. Okay. How will how will duplicate events be suppressed? Okay. Two ways. Key. So if two events have the same key, they can be considered duplicates. Okay. So instead of showing you two events on the browser, OBM will just count additional events and then update the count field. Okay, so keys are being used, or ETIs. So if two events arrive and their ETIs are the same, their related CI, their ETIs and their ETI value are the same, they're said to be duplicate events, so only one will be displayed on the browser and the duplicate column will be incremented. Okay? What if you don't have any key and you don't have any ETI? You can duplicate, you can suppress duplicate by selecting event attributes. By default, it is disabled. Okay? So if two events have the same set of attributes, they can be considered they can be considered duplicates, and as long as they as long as all this their attributes are the same, all attributes that you have defined are the same, and you can be forgiven with the time, right? So the only thing that you're not after is time. So, but all the rest of the attributes that you have defined are the same. They can be considered as the same attributes. Ideally, you don't want to use this because it puts additional resource requirements and consumes additional resources on the server. Okay, but if you don't have any choice, you can do that. Personally, I would go for keys and I would go for ETIs. If you have a background in OM, if you have a background in OM, you might go for keys. If you don't have any background in OM, I would suggest invest time on ETIs instead. Okay? The key capabilities are, an old backward compatibility capabilities that I would personally not touch anymore. I would rather go for keys as long as it's possible to go with to go with ETIs, right? So I only touch keys if it's going to be backward compatibility, okay? And if it's something that is part of content packs, because content packs are using lots of keys, okay? So OBM applies duplicate suppression to receive events. If a new event has skip duplicate suppression flag, duplicate suppression is skipped. Okay, so you can define that on a per event setting. If the key attribute is populated, okay, what would happen is it will search for an existing active event that has the same key as the new event. If no match is found, okay, and the new event has a valid ETI, it will search for an active event that has the same ETI and related CI. Okay? If it finds, then it will be suppressed. If the key attribute is not populated in an event, search for an existing active event that has the same ETI and ETI value is the same, right? So not populated and no match will have and will result to the same processing behavior. By default, active events are considered regardless of each. You can define also a maximum duplicate events. Okay, so meaning to say, duplicate events will be suppressed regardless of the interval between events. So if I receive an event last year, right, and it's still active, and I receive another event today with the same key, the event today will be suppressed. Okay, so do you want that to happen? Because the default is, as long as it's active, as long as there's one active, they will be considered events. You can define a maximum age. Okay, so you can say, well, duplicate events will only be suppressed if the duplicate arrived within so and so amount of time, maybe 15 minutes. I would really put a maximum age there of 15 minutes. Okay, because otherwise, what that means is nobody's picking it up. Okay, if nobody's picking it up, I would rather, you know, uh, create another key, right, and create another event. So what would happen? The duplicate count when there are duplicates. Okay, If the incoming event is identified as a duplicate, duplicate count is increased. Receive time is set to the new event. Okay. The original create time attribute is unchanged. If enabled, the event title is set to that of the new event. If enabled, by default, it's not enabled. So the title remains the same. Okay. If enabled, the event severity is set to that of the new event. Okay. Or the worst severity of the two events. By default, it's not enabled, so the original severity still remains. Okay. If enabled, the event description is set to the new event. Default is false, so the description remains. Okay. If enabled, entries are added to event history. By default, it's not added to event history, meaning to say you don't see the duplicates anymore, which is different from the old behavior. You can set it all to true if you want. If you wanted to, where do you set it? You set it in administrator infrastructure settings. So this is administration infrastructure settings. You can use this as a reference. You can also go directly to the infrastructure settings and you will see that it will be there, right? If you don't have key and you don't have ETIs, you can detect duplicates by identical attributes. You can select from any of the attributes available for the events. Try to use this sparingly, guys. Right? This is really very resource intensive, right? So because it will check for every attribute and any permutations thereof. Okay, so any attributes and any permutations. So imagine if you create several rules. Okay, so it will need to permute all of those configuration settings. Okay, which is not going to be uh very good for your performance. Okay, so up next will be event suppression. Event suppression. Well, event suppression is actually very simple. You can create a filter. You can create a filter, and in that filter, you can match a criteria. Okay. Benefits will be it will prevent unnecessary cluttering of the event browser and reduces the load on the server. Okay. Ideally, though, if you have an agent, do it on the agent. So ideally, don't send anything that you're going to suppress anyway. That's what I always tell my students, right? So try not to send events to OBM if you think it's gonna be suppressed anyway. Okay, so try to eliminate the events at the source. Okay, however, there are some cases when it might not be possible to do so. So then you go to event to OBM. How do you do that? It's actually very simple. Just go to event processing correlation event suppression. Right. So here, then you create a new rule. You create a new rule. You can create as many rules as you like. No problem. You can create as many rules as you like. It's not gonna be an issue. Okay. So what do you put in the rule? Give it a name, create a filter, activate. Any event, excuse me, any event that passes the filter will be suppressed. Say again, Roberto, any event that passes the filter will be suppressed. So if that's the case, what does that mean? The event has already been registered. Does that make sense, guys? Event suppression will happen here. Okay? So it will go through all that process, including register events, analyze resolver, hints, only to be suppressed at this point. before the saving. So you see, if you can suppress it on the source, suppress it on the source. Okay? Because if you're going to do it on the server side, okay, what if you have something here? What if you have something here? Right? And then eventually you realize, okay, I'm not actually interested with that anyway. Right? It's just a suppression that I'm going to do. Okay? Event storm suppression, okay, is going to suppress event storms. What are considered event storms? A single problem, okay, can create a storm of events. Okay? So it will have an excessive volume events that can overload the server. Okay? And if you go back here, where's that particular slide? Sorry about this. Um this is on the DPS. Where do event suppression happen? Event suppression happens on the gateway. Remember that? Okay? So if you if there will be an excessive volume of events and it can overload the server, you must have an event storm suppression in place. Because remember, you have two servers. You have the gateway and the DPS, right? The gateway is this. This is the gateway. This is the DPS. Suppression happens before it goes into the DPS. So if you can suppress storms, you protect the DPS. If you can suppress storms and if you can detect storms, you can protect the DPS. If you don't suppress event storms, all events will go through DPS, guys. Right? It can potentially bring down your server. So how do you suppress? It's actually very easy, right? So the key features of event storm suppression are detect detect excessive event volume from a single source. Suppress these events so they will not be stored in the OBM gate on the OBM database. Suppression takes place on the gateway server. So in addition to that, okay, it does not affect the DPS or the OBM database. Suppression continues until the event rate drops significantly. An event is generated when or at the beginning of the storm and at the end of the storm. Okay? So if you want to exclude events from being suppressed from a single source, you can also do so. Okay? How do you do this? Actually, very simple. Okay? So it might be better if we look at it on the actual screen. You just go to okay. Just go to administration, go to event storm suppression. Okay. Event storm suppression here. And just add or edit your suppression. It's actually very simple. Specify how many events coming from the same source within this interval will we consider it as an event storm. The default is if I receive 1000 events, rolling time window. If I receive 1000 events from one source within a 5-minute interval, I will generate a begin event. And these are the parameters of the begin event. Okay? I will continue. I will be in a state of an event storm until I drop below this. If I drop below 100 events in the last 5 minutes, I will end my suppression. So I will also generate an end event. If there are events that I don't want to suppress because they're important, I can go to and put that in an exemption here. Okay. The event storm is rolling time window. Okay. It's a rolling time window. Module 5, guys. Okay. For lab 5, in your lab exercises, this is what you will do. You will close related events. You will implement duplicate event suppression, implement event suppression, and configure event suppression. Okay, so this three. All right. So if you also want, you can go for a break, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes rather, and then do the lab exercises. So I want to start something in the morning before we go for lunch. But we'll see. So let's try 60 minutes here first. If you need an extension, we can extend it and rather and go to an early lunch instead, right? So let's go for a break. Then labs. Okay. Uh, let's try 60 minutes in our timer. If you need to extend later, we'll talk about that. Okay. So I'll stop talking for now. I'll let you do your lab exercises first and your break. Okay. Okay, guys. There's no request for an extension. I guess you're okay to discuss some topics before we go to lunch, as well as to hopefully you're catching up with the lab exercises. Okay, so if you can hear me, let me know by some indicator. You know the drill. Raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, so topology-based event correlation. So we can definitely talk about the slides here, but personally, this is one of the things that I like most about OBM. Uh, the T in TBEC here is basically topology. Okay, and I only have maybe 25 minutes before lunch, before 12 p.m. Central. So I might go beyond that, maybe 10 minutes to 15 minutes. So I hope you don't mind. And I hope you have a little bit of snacks for our lab exercises there. But if you can, give me 10 minutes to 15 minutes after 12 noon, that would be enough for me to discuss everything that I want to discuss here. Event correlation, correlating events with one another is not something new. We've been trying to do that for a very long time. Okay, so that's one fact. The second fact is uh, event correlation will normally require technical know-how, technical knowledge. Okay, so this is a second fact. Now, the problem with that, the problem with technical knowledge, when I say technical, I would normally mean, programming languages, a little bit of coding, things like that. The problem with uh, coding in event correlation is you isolate the people who you really need. Okay. So for example, you'd isolate system administrators. You'd isolate database administrators. Normally, database administrators will have a lot of programming experience, coding requirements. Okay, because normally one of the natural progression of programmers is to move to database administration. It's just part of it, right? So system administration, it somehow differs, right? So sometimes network administrators uh, do a horizontal move and vice versa. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily need to be programmers. Okay, so the thing with event correlation at the highly technical level is you isolate the people who you really need most: system administrators, service managers, configuration managers, contract people, architects, and you really need them. That's a thing, right? So when it comes to event correlation, it normally falls under the shoulder or on the shoulder of uh, event administrators. And given given our load, given our responsibility, sometimes we don't give it enough emphasis. Okay. Third will be ITIL. So in ITIL, we wanted to create configuration items. And the problem with relationships between configuration items is we were struggling before with the arrows, the direction of the arrow. Simply put, what should be the parent? Should the database CI be the parent of a node? or vice versa should the node be the parent of the database CI. The problem being is back in the days, ITIL's entry point is the monitoring team. Honestly speaking, uh, in order for vendors to penetrate the customer environment, usually we talk about ITIL in the sense of monitoring. Okay, so in my experience, a lot of times we're able to penetrate ITIL because of monitoring requirements. So when you build configuration items, there will be plenty of debate. What will be the parent and what will be the child? Okay, and that somehow isolated the event correlation services with the CMDB and configuration items. Okay, that all changed. That landscape changed when OBM introduced TBEC, which is topology based event correlation. In topology based event correlation, you're basically working with CIs, okay? So still with CIs and the relationships, okay? So CIs and relationships, and you don't care about the direction. So as long as there is a relationship, you can create correlation between them, okay? So the goal here primarily is for you to correlate events. Okay, so on the slide, the goal here is for primarily for you to correlate events. So on the slide, you have several events. So you want in TBEC to be able to define symptoms, causes between events, right? Using topology. The benefit of that is you don't need to go in programming mode. You use whatever you already know, in this case topology, and use that topology together with ETI and create relationship between these events. So the primary benefit here is you will be able to invite people that's not highly technical. Okay, you'll be able to invite people that's not who are not really highly technical into the mix, allowing to be able to relate events with one another. Okay, so remember the goal here is to identify the cause and the symptom. Okay, so you just define the relationships. So in this requirement here, I have CIs. Okay, and I can define the cause and symptoms if the event comes from this, and this will become the symptom, right? As long as it's on the same topology. Okay, so on the slide here, you will notice I have an Oracle CI and a file system CI. I can say that if there is going to be an event for the file system, it can become a cause for the event for Oracle. So the event for Oracle will be marked as a symptom, and the event for the file system will be marked as a cause, right? So therefore, in my browser, it will be less cluttered. So I will have some indications. The thing with that is if you notice the direction of the arrow, right? The arrow direction is towards the file system, meaning to say if you think about it, the Oracle is the parent of the file system, which is generally what's going to happen, but not necessarily so, right? But not necessarily so because there could be a scenario where, right, in this case, I have a CI on the same topology, okay, on the same topology that becomes a cause of an event of another CI on the same topology, but they don't have direct relationship between them. Okay? So they don't have a direct relationship between them as long as they appear on the same topology. So you can say here that the link down status of this node is the cause of the ping unavailable of this node. Okay? The beauty of that also is topology will automatically implement a relationship. So the ping unavailable from this node is not affected by anything that's going on in here. Because anything that's going on in here is exclusive to that topology. You create one rule, every rule will be applied, right? And the topology will be that particular defined. Okay, so to understand this very clearly, let's look at what we have. Okay, so let's go in, and I'm going to demonstrate the other half. The other half of the slides are basically screenshots for demonstration. So I'd rather demonstrate this one. Okay, so you should be looking at my screen. Forgot to open my other system. Let me just log in. MRHD2. This is a thing. Okay. So I've I've created some of this already, right? To minimize the amount of demonstration required. Okay. But here is what we have. Here's what we have. If you look at my topology, right? If you look at my topology, this is my topology here for for Orion. If you look at my topology for Orion, this is my Orion topology. Okay, so meaning to say, this is how Orion looks like in terms of its connectivity. Okay, so Orion has. Let me see here. Maybe this is better because it's gonna be bigger. Okay, so this is how Orion looks like. So Orion has web order. You see that, right? So web order is a child of Orion. How do I know that? Because the the arrow is towards web order. Okay? So back in the days, that becomes a little bit of an issue because of the hierarchy. So that means if you look at the hierarchy, Orion is above web order, right? If you look at the hierarchy, Orion is above the web order. So if you look at it from status calculation and status propagation, it is always going up, right? So the direction is always going up in terms of status calculation and status propagation. So that means supposedly the supposedly the calculation of event settings and all of those things should work its way from the bottom of the hierarchy all the way up. So that means if you're going to follow that logic, it will be Orion that should be the cause of the node, which is in this case not necessarily true. Because we can say that if there will be anything that would happen in Orion, it could affect web order. So back in the day, that becomes a problem because the direction of the arrow will need to change based on that requirement. If I would say no, Orion should affect the web order, so I should reverse that arrow direction. In OBM, it doesn't matter. It does not matter what the arrow direction is, as long as they have a relationship directly to one another or they have a relationship within the topology. What you're looking at right now is a direct topology, right? What you're looking at right now, rather, is a direct relationship. When you say topology, you're working with views. When you say topology, you're working with views, and I don't want to touch this in this area because you know what happens. So I'll work with the view later in another setting. Okay, so for now, let's write it down so you don't get confused. So for now, let's write it down. Okay, so we can say that Orion is basically related to web server. Okay. So Orion is Windows or Node. So remember the hierarchy. Web server is MySQL. Okay. So that's how. So this is the instance. These are the objects, and these are the instance. Okay. So if I want TBEC, I just need to go to the TBEC environment. So I go to TBEC environment. But before we go to TBEC environment, we need to review our ETIs. Okay? We need to review our ETIs. Remember, ETIs are associated with the CI type, right? So there will be a CI type for Windows or Node, okay? There will be a CI type for MySQL, right? Which we created already. So we know that already. So now we go to TBEC. So as a review, we know ETIs already. We know what CI types already. Classes, these are classes, and these are instances. So remember my example a while ago. Roberto is the object. Roberto is the instance. A class is the definition. Okay. So let's go and go to topology-based event correlation, which I have created already. But for the purpose of discussion, I'm going to create a new one, and we're not going to save it. Just for you to see. If you want to create a new TBEC, it's actually very simple. Go to administration, go to event processing, correlation. Under correlation, you will see topology-based correlation, and these windows appear. Okay. So I create this to start. Okay. So topology TBEC, right? So just to get started. Okay. So just to get started here, it's gonna be a TBEC rule, right? So what do you need? You need to review your knowledge on CI types. You need to review your knowledge on ETIs. You also might probably need to, brush up on views. Why? Because it is based on RTSM view. So you first need to create a view. Since this is not a UCMDB training, okay, we'll just select whatever exists there. A view in RTSM is extracting data from the database. A view definition will show you CI types. A view definition will show you CI types. So when I select a view here, I'm actually not opening a view. I'm opening the view definition. Okay? So when I open, let's say, my SQL deployment view, this one here, so if you select that, it will open the view definition, okay, that I have. So if I click this view will appear here. Who creates this? This will be created by your UCMDB people, right? So who creates this? This will be created by RTSM people, UCMDB DB people, or you. Okay. In order for you to create view, you need to be familiar with UCMDB. Okay. Now, case in point, who creates the view? Normally UCMDB people. Who are the UCMDB folks? Right? If you attend my UCMDB training, we talk about the persona on UCMDB. It could include, you know, uh, administrators. It could include configuration manager analysts, configuration manager specialists, configuration manager architects, right? Configuration people. It could contain architects. So so they create views there. This output is what you're looking at right now. Their output is your input to your settings. And this is what I'm talking about, guys. This is exactly what I'm talking about. If you will be doing it, you will be consuming what they have created. If they move over to OBM, they can extend what they're doing over there. They don't need any programming language. So what do we need? We needed in this case here we need the CI types. Okay? So computer CI types. And what else do we need? We need the web order, the MySQL CI type, this one here. The MySQL CI type. Okay? What we wanted to do is, well, what we wanted to do is maybe is to identify the node down event. ETI is the cause, okay, of the down event of MySQL. That's what we want. So we have two events. One event is associated with the MySQL CI. I want that to become the symptom. And one event is going to be associated with the Orion CI, and I want that to be the cause. Right? Look at the phrases that I'm discussing here. The event should be associated with the MySQL CI, so CI resolution, module 3, and the node event should be associated with the node Orion CI, another CI resolution, module 3. So I select the computer here. So that's module 3. So this is module 3. Okay? So module 3, I select the computer. When I select the computer here, all ETIs, all indicators will appear on the right. All indicators. Second, Roberto, all indicators. For the CI type. For the computer CI type, there's a node status indicator called down. I want this event type indicator to be the cause. So I select this, go to the top. You have two options here, right? Mark this as a cause, add this as a symptom. I will mark the node status ETI down as the cause. Okay? Then I select MySQL, which is the other CI. When I select the MySQL here, you will notice that the coolness indicator appears. I want the critical to become the symptom. So I just did that. I just created a topology based event correlation. I've just created that. Who's doing this? Non-programmers. This can be done by the engineers, architects, you, programmers, database administrators, system administrators, anybody who is familiar with the analysis of events here. Okay? You can help, you can ask help from them, or you can give them, responsible users. So you see that, right? So that's what I created. I'm not going to save this anymore, right? So I'm not going to save this, but for the sake of saving it, but I've created one already called Roberto Service. So which is exactly the same. So after I created the correlation, I need to modify my policies. So I need to modify my policy. So I just go to my policy template. Okay. This one, this is module 4. So we're applying module 4 skill set here. So what we've learned in module 4. So don't get confused here, guys. We're just applying the things that we've learned in module 4. So I'm going to edit this. So remember in module 4, we added event type indicators to the policy. So I did exactly the same. So check this out. Okay, so if I go to rules, so you've got the down there. I go to event attributes. Nothing changed. You see my event type indicator? I'm using coolness critical. Now, if you remember, I used this in my TBEZ. Remember that? This became the symptom, right? So this is a symptom. So when I generate this event, the event will be marked with this ETI, and if my TBC is active, it will watch out and determine that this is a symptom. Okay? Now, I created another rule here for the node. For the event attributes, I use the node status ETI hint. So this is the cause, right? So that's the cause. Okay? And then I deployed it to the node. It's already on the node. So let's now simulate this. Just like that. You don't need any programming skills, anything. Just like that. If I execute node, right? So it's going to be node down here. The CI CI. That's the reason why relating all events to nodes in OBM is not a good idea. Okay? You want to take advantage of topology. So, CI resolution. So, here I'm making sure that the event that I'm going to generate is for the web order CI and not for the node. Press enter. Observe. It will appear here. Not yet. It will appear here. The related CI, this guy is web order MySQL. Okay? So if I go to another node crashed here, look at my node, CI resolution. This is the most important part. I don't have the @ signs. So what that means is I want this event to be associated with the node CI because I want the topology, right? The first one was for the web order CI. The second one is for the node. Press enter. Observe what's going to happen. It will appear, right? But then you will notice that under the correlation, you will now see the field. So if you're an operator, you just need to look for the operation. Oh, there's a correlation tab. I'm after all causes. This is a cause. This is a symptom. I'm after all causes. Do you see that? This is the cause. This is the symptom. So if I go here, it's the cause. I go to related events. I will notice that these are the related events. So I can create a filter if I wanted to. I can create a filter based on correlation rules. I can select I want to see all. Okay, I want to see only events that are marked as cause. I can go here, create a new filter if I wanted to. Okay, all cause events. So I don't want to see symptoms because this is a symptom, right? So that's the correlation rule. This is a symptom. Okay, so if I go here, close the event, the cause and the symptom are both closed. Just like that. Right? So all you need to do is to follow everything that we've learned. Module 3, CI resolution. Module 4, ETI hints. Just like that. You do it, observe. Every time you do it, it's going to be the same. Okay? It's now going to be the cost here. Right? So it got automatically deleted. Okay? Because I think we are still under suppression of duplicates. Okay? We're still suppressing duplicates here. Now, if you go and change this to APM, right? You will notice it's gonna be different, right? Because now the related CI is APM. So there is no relationship between web order and APM. Does that make sense? So it does not matter. Sorry, you don't need to create individual rules for every service. You can have a rule and it will automatically take that because the web order has nothing to do with APM. So only related configuration items will follow. So you're safe in the sense where it will never get uh, confused, right? You can also select two events and define the relationship between them, right? So you can create a correlation rule here if you wanted to. You can create a correlation rule and say those two events are related with one another, one being the cause and one being the symptom, right? You can do that as well if you don't have the rule. But with TBEC, okay, with TBEC, we can easily create topology-based event correlation with ETIs. So as you can see here, the concept can, if the concept can be overwhelming, and maybe at first it might look very confusing, but once you get the hang of using ETIs, it becomes very easy, right? It becomes natural because it's so easy to create TBEC. It's so easy to create indicators. Yes, it will take work and planning, but you can spend time on planning and not on coding, right? And this is the beauty of topology-based event correlation. That's the primary reason why when HP came out with OMI back in the days, the event correlation services, the MSI, is not there anymore, right? So back in the days, if you go to say uh, policy templates, back in the days, if you go to policy templates, edit this, okay? I'll just show you one thing. We're almost ready for lunch. I'm ready for lunch. My my digestive system is. So one more. So back in the days, if I needed correlation, I need to go to event correlation here, right? So I need to do it over here. Then I go to advanced. Okay. You see this agent MSI? So we enable that. And then we create a Java program to tap into the message stream, and there is what we call the event, we they call it before the event correlation development kit. Okay, so you need to have that kit. So it's like, the IntelliJ ideal. So it's a programming interface to allow it to create codes. Okay, so that's TBEC, guys. um for now, I think everything that I wanted to discuss as far as that is concerned. Don't worry about the things that the concepts, like the best practices, all of those. We will get there. We will get there. So for now, what we'll do is we'll go to lunch, then do some lab exercises. I guess we can go for, you know 45 minutes lunch and 60 minutes labs, or vice versa, depending on what you want. So, but for now, I'll put 105 minutes. Okay, so you plan your lunch and you plan your lab exercises. Okay, it can be extended. So, but for the meantime, let's try maybe 105 minutes. Okay, for both lunch and lab exercises. Okay. So in your labs, you're going to analyze correlated events, analyze and apply existing TB-easy correlation rules, and create TB-easy correlation rule. Okay. So I'll go to lunch first and then come back, and I'll see you after lunch. So enjoy your lunch for now.